In the heart of Texas, where glass towers rise over oil fields and money speaks louder than words, stood one of the most powerful energy companies in the state, Harrison Oil and Energy. For over 4 decades, it had been built brick by one man, Richard Hale, a man known for discipline, a man known for vision, a man who trusted very few people. And today, he was about to step down. The elevator doors opened quietly on the top floor. Margaret Hale stepped out. She wore a simple navy blue suit, her hair neatly tied back, no jewelry, no expression. She walked down the long hallway toward the boardroom, her heels echoing softly against the marble floor. For 27 years, she had walked these same halls, always quietly, always unnoticed. To most people inside this building, she was just the assistant. But today, everything would change. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was tense. 7 board members sat around the long table. At the head sat Richard Hale, the founder himself. His hands trembled slightly as he held a glass of water. Age and illness had finally caught up with him. Across from him sat his son, Ethan Hale. Young, confident, impatient. He leaned back in his chair like a man who already owned the world. Margaret took her seat at the far end of the table and opened her leather folder. She didn't speak. She never spoke unless necessary. Richard cleared his throat. "This will be my last board meeting," he said quietly. The room fell silent. "My health no longer allows me to continue running the company." Ethan straightened in his chair, a smile slowly forming on his face. "I'm ready to take over, Dad," he said confidently. Richard didn't answer immediately. Instead, his eyes drifted toward Margaret. She met his gaze briefly, then looked down again. "For years," Richard continued, "this company has survived because of discipline, loyalty, and careful decisions." Ethan leaned forward. "And now it's time to grow. Times have changed. Harrison Oil needs expansion." He paused dramatically. "I've already spoken with Apex Global. They're ready to buy 60% of the company." A ripple moved through the room. Apex Global. A corporate giant known for buying family businesses and tearing them apart. Margaret's fingers tightened slightly around her pen. Richard's jaw clenched. "And what happens to the workers?" he asked. Ethan shrugged. "Business is business." That was when Margaret finally spoke. Her voice was calm, steady. "Sir, may I ask a question?" Everyone turned toward her. Ethan looked surprised, almost annoyed. Richard nodded slowly. "Go ahead, Margaret." She stood up. "Do you know what happens to companies after Apex acquires them?" Ethan scoffed. "They modernize." Margaret looked him straight in the eyes. "No, they shut them down." She pressed a button on the remote. A screen lit up. Graphs appeared. Company names, dates, closures. Every company Apex acquired in the last 10 years no longer exists. Employees fired, assets sold, brands erased. Silence filled the room. "This company will not survive that deal," she said calmly. Ethan laughed nervously. "You're overstepping. This decision is above your position." Margaret didn't react. She simply turned toward Richard. "Sir, did you tell him about the clause?" The room froze. Ethan frowned. "What clause?" Richard closed his eyes. Margaret opened her folder. 3 years ago, after the refinery crisis, you amended the company charter." She placed a document on the table. "Clause 14B. Any sale of controlling interest requires 2 signatures." Ethan leaned forward. "Mine and yours." Margaret looked at him. No. The room went silent. Yours and mine. Ethan's face drained of color. Richard spoke quietly. She's right. Ethan stood up abruptly. You gave her that power? She's your assistant! Richard's voice trembled, but it was firm. She's the reason this company survived. Margaret spoke again. You trusted me to protect what you built. Ethan laughed bitterly. This is insane! You think the board will follow you? Margaret turned to the table. Gentlemen, you've seen the data. No one spoke. Not a single person objected, because they all knew the truth. Ethan's voice rose. You're all making a mistake! Margaret closed her folder. Then let history judge us. She turned toward Richard. With your permission, sir. Richard nodded slowly. Margaret took a breath. As of today, I am exercising my authority as operational guardian of Harrison Oil. She paused. The sale to Apex Global is blocked. The words echoed through the room. Ethan staggered back. You can't do this! Margaret looked at him, calm, steady, unshaken. I just did. The board meeting ended in silence. Ethan stood frozen, staring at the woman he had underestimated for years. Margaret gathered her papers, walked toward the door, and stopped. Without turning back, she said, Power isn't taken by force, Ethan. It's earned through responsibility. And then she walked out. And one sentence written in bold ink. Protect the people. The company will follow. Richard had written that. She remembered the day clearly. It was the night the refinery almost shut down. Everyone panicked. Suppliers pulled out, banks refused loans, and Richard sat silently in this very room. She had stayed late that night. You should go home, he had told her. She shook her head. If this company falls, hundreds of families lose everything. That was the night he began trusting her, not because she was smart, but because she cared. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she said. The door opened slowly. It was Daniel Cruz, head of operations, a man who had started as a technician and worked his way up. I heard what happened, he said carefully. Margaret nodded. People are nervous. I know. They're afraid of layoffs, of changes. Margaret stood up. Tell them to keep working as usual. Daniel hesitated. And the suppliers? She looked him in the eye. I'm handling that. Later that evening, Margaret sat alone in her home. A small house, modest, quiet. No luxury, no display of wealth. She poured herself a cup of tea and opened her laptop. One by one, she began sending messages. Not emails, not corporate notices, personal messages. To the refinery supervisor, your team's safety plan saved lives. Thank you. To the logistics manager, you kept deliveries moving during the worst year. I remember. To the supplier in New Mexico, your trust matters. I won't forget it. Each message was short, honest, human, and slowly, replies came in. We're with you. You've always been fair. Let us know what you need. Margaret closed her laptop and exhaled. The network was still alive. Meanwhile, Ethan Hale sat alone in his apartment overlooking the city. The skyline glittered, but he felt hollow. For the first time in his life, something hadn't gone his way. He replayed the boardroom moment again and again. His father's eyes. Not angry. Disappointed. He poured himself a drink but didn't touch it. What did I miss? He whispered. The next morning, the company awoke to unexpected news. A major supplier publicly announced, "We will continue our partnership with Harrison Oil under its current leadership." Then another. and another. By noon, industry blogs began buzzing. Unexpected loyalty shown to internal leadership. Old partnerships proving stronger than corporate offers. Ethan stared at his screen. His phone buzzed. A message from Apex Global. Deal is off. Too unstable. He dropped the phone. Across town, Margaret stood by the window of her office, watching the sunrise over the refinery. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply whispered, "Thank you, Richard." But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. Because power, once challenged, never disappears quietly, and Ethan Hale was not finished yet. The morning sun rose slowly over the city, but inside Harrison Oil, the air was heavy, too quiet, too calm. Margaret stood by the window of her office watching workers arrive at the refinery gates, helmets on, lunchboxes in hand, faces tired but hopeful. She knew one thing clearly. This calm would not last. Across town, in a glass penthouse overlooking the skyline, Ethan Hale sat in silence. The phone lay on the table, unanswered. Apex Global was gone. The board had turned cold, and the woman he once ignored now held everything. His fingers curled into fists. "This isn't over," he muttered. He stood up and walked toward the window, staring down at the city. "They think I'll walk away?" A slow, dangerous smile crossed his face. "No." Later that afternoon, Margaret received a call. Not from a supplier, not from an executive, from an old name she hadn't heard in years. "Hello, Margaret." Her breath caught. She recognized the voice instantly. Caleb Turner, the former legal advisor of Harrison Oil, a man who had vanished years ago after a dispute with Richard. "I hear congratulations are in order," he said calmly. Margaret remained silent. "I also hear Ethan is unhappy." She closed her eyes. "What do you want, Caleb?" A pause. "To warn you." Her grip tightened. "Ethan is making calls. Dangerous ones." "What kind of calls?" "The kind that don't show up in emails." The line went dead. That evening, Margaret called an emergency meeting. Only 3 people were invited. Daniel Cruz, Miss Riley, and Javier, the head winemaker. They gathered in the small conference room. Margaret didn't waste time. "Ethan is planning something." Daniel frowned. "What kind of something?" "Legal pressure, media pressure, maybe worse." Miss Riley spoke softly. "He always wanted control." Margaret nodded. "And now he wants revenge." Javier leaned forward. "Then what do we do?" Margaret looked at them, her voice calm but firm. "We protect the truth." She opened a folder and slid documents across the table. "These are internal records from the last 20 years. Daniel's eyes widened. "Why keep these?" "Because Richard told me to." She paused. "He said, one day, someone might try to rewrite history." That night, news broke. A business article appeared online. Questions raised over leadership change at Harrison Oil. Anonymous sources claimed mismanagement, hidden losses, internal conflicts. Ethan's fingerprints were everywhere. Phones started ringing. Emails flooded in. Investors panicked. The board demanded answers. Margaret read the article carefully, then smiled faintly. "He's rushing," she whispered. The next morning, she walked into the boardroom holding a single flash drive. The room was full. Board members, legal advisors, media representatives. Ethan sat at the far end, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Margaret stood calmly. "You've all read the article," she began. Murmurs followed. "I won't deny that the company is facing challenges." She paused. "But I will deny the lies." She plugged in the flash drive. The screen lit up. Financial records, audit reports, signed approvals, dated documents. Every major decision traced back, clearly and cleanly. Then came the final file, a video. Richard Hale, sitting in his office, his voice weak but clear. If you're watching this, then it means someone tried to undo what we built. The room fell silent. I want it on record that Margaret Collins has acted with integrity, always. Any claim otherwise is false. Ethan's face drained of color. I trusted her with my life's work. The video ended. No one spoke. A board member finally stood. I motioned to reaffirm Margaret Collins as CEO. Another followed. So moved. All eyes turned to Ethan. He stood slowly. You think this is over, he said quietly. Margaret met his gaze. No, she said, but it is decided. He walked out without another word. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the refinery, Margaret stood alone once more. Daniel approached her. You won. She shook her head. No. She looked toward the horizon. I survived. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You may have won today, but this story isn't finished. She exhaled slowly, then deleted the message, because deep down, she knew something Ethan didn't. Power built on anger collapses. Power built on trust endures. The storm didn't come with thunder. It came quietly. Emails stopped, calls went unanswered, meetings were canceled without explanation. Inside Harrison Oil, something invisible had shifted, and Margaret felt it. She stood by the window again, the same place she had stood for years. But today, the sky looked different. Clouds rolled slowly over the refinery, dark and heavy, a warning. Down in the city, Ethan Hale sat in a private office far from the company's name. No logos, no records, no witnesses. Across the table sat three men, not businessmen. Fixers. We don't need to destroy her. We just need to make people doubt her. Ethan's jaw tightened. She took everything from me. The man leaned forward. Then we take something from her. The next morning, headlines exploded. Internal investigation launched at Harrison Oil. Questions raised about CEO's past decisions. The news spread fast. Social media ignited. Speculation grew. Margaret watched the headlines scroll silently across the screen. She didn't react. She had expected this. Daniel rushed into her office. They're accusing you of hiding financial data. She nodded slowly. They're trying to shake confidence. And the board? Divided, he said. Some are scared. Margaret closed her eyes for a moment. Then she stood. Call an all-hands meeting. Daniel blinked. Everyone? Everyone. The warehouse floor filled with workers, engineers, operators, clerks, drivers, faces tired, confused. Margaret stepped onto the platform. No microphone, no notes. Just her voice. I won't pretend everything is perfect, she said. The room fell silent. But I will tell you the truth. She looked around. This company was never built on shortcuts. It was built on people who showed up every day and did honest work. Murmurs of agreement. They're trying to make you doubt me. She paused. So I'll make this simple. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. Every financial record is open. Every decision, every dollar. A ripple moved through the crowd. If you find even one lie, I will step down. Silence. Then someone spoke. It was an older mechanic. You stayed when things were hard. Another voice followed. You protected our jobs. Then another. You listened. The room slowly filled with nods. Margaret swallowed hard. This company belongs to all of us, she said quietly. Applause began. Slow, then loud, then unstoppable. Across town, Ethan watched the live stream. His hands trembled. "They're siding with her," he whispered. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "You're running out of moves," a voice said. Ethan slammed the phone down. He knew it was true, but he wasn't done yet. That night, Margaret received a message, a single line. "You don't know what your father hid." Her heart skipped. She stared at the screen. Then another message followed. "Meet me if you want the truth." Location attached. An old storage facility near the docks. She hesitated, then picked up her coat. The warehouse was empty, cold, echoing. Footsteps approached from the shadows. A man stepped forward. Older, tired eyes. "I worked for Richard, years ago." Margaret's breath caught. "What do you want?" "To clear my conscience." He handed her a folder. "Your father protected someone a long time ago." Her hands shook as she opened it. Documents. Names. Dates. One name circled in red. Ethan Hale. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "What is this?" The man looked at her. "The reason your husband changed his will." Silence fell between them. The truth was heavier than she imagined, and suddenly, everything made sense. Margaret walked out into the night, the weight of the past pressing on her chest. The enemy wasn't just ambition, it was history. And now she had to decide. Protect the company or protect the truth? The first light of dawn broke over Texas. The refinery chimneys glowed softly in the early sun. Smoke twisted into the sky as if carrying the weight of decades. Inside Harrison Oil, Margaret Hale sat at her desk, calm, composed, unshaken. She looked at the folder on her desk. Ethan Hale's name circled in red. The proof of his schemes. The truth. The board meeting was called again. This time, Margaret was in complete control. Everyone knew it. Executives, lawyers, investors, all eyes were on her. She stood. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice steady, "this company belongs to those who protect it, not those who exploit it." Heads nodded. Whispers spread through the room. She continued. "All past decisions are open to review. Every dollar accounted for. Transparency will guide us forward." Ethan entered. He paused at the door. Margaret looked at him. No anger, no gloating, just calm authority. "You underestimated me," she said quietly. He said nothing. Outside, the media had gathered. Live broadcasts, flashing cameras, social media trending. Margaret's announcement went out. Harrison Oil will remain independent. Growth will be ethical. Employees' jobs secure. Trust is the currency that matters most. The board unanimously voted to reaffirm Margaret as CEO. Investors expressed support. Suppliers confirmed loyalty. The employees cheered. The company, the legacy, was safe. Ethan Hale's plan had crumbled. Later, Margaret returned to her office alone. The weight of the past weeks finally hit her. Years of unseen work, years of loyalty ignored, years of silent dedication. She exhaled slowly. The folder of evidence sat quietly on her desk. She didn't need to look at it anymore. The truth had been acknowledged. Justice had been done. Not through anger, not through revenge, but through clarity, calm, and integrity. That evening, Margaret walked outside. The Texas wind brushed her face. She inhaled deeply. Freedom felt heavy, but good. She had survived the storm, protected the people, and preserved the legacy. She reached for her phone. A message from Daniel Cruz. "You did it. The company is safe." Margaret smiled. Not for herself, for everyone who had trusted her, for everyone who believed that responsibility matters more than ambition. And as the sun set over the refinery, the city seemed at peace, because Harrison Oil had a leader who understood true power. Not the power to take, the power to protect. And Margaret Hale had earned it.